Mr. Waghmar, please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Kasaka. The views expressed herein constitute my sole prerogative. They neither imply nor suggest the orientation, views, current thinking or position of the university, school or regional and research studies centers with which I hold affiliation. If Afghanistan has earned the sobriquet graveyard of empires, no lesser claim can be made by Balochistan, Pakistan's Kabristan graveyard. The province, geographically Pakistan as well as Iran's largest, has become just that, with more than 14,800 disappearances since 2001, according to the voice of Baloch missing persons, and the clockwork regularity with which the establishment's self-styled jawbars, gallant-hearted custodians, quote, pick up and dump Baloch corpses, particularly men, but also entire families, students, teachers, journalists, and human rights activists. It brings to mind the Baloch balladier's plaint, Bauf digari, thak hagant, my pillow was made of the ground. Cold comfort, however, to point out that as and when the kith and kin of these Baloch civilians are able to secure their mutilated remains, prayers and makeshift funerals are possible. Iranian Baloches, on the other hand, like other Sunnis, ostensibly equal citizens of that Islamic Republic since 1979, cannot pray in their capital Tehran, for that metropolis of some 14 millions, the largest urban center in West Asia, lacks a Sunni mosque. There never has been one in Tehran since 1979 for the record. On Pakistan's 66th Independence Day, August 14, 2013, Raza Jahangir Baloch, Secretary General of the Baloch student organization Azad, was killed in Turbat. Next day, August 15, it was the turn of Sindhi nationalists of the GA Sindh Tehreek, Eternal Sindh movement, 3 of whom were publicly killed by Karachi police in a park, which runs counter to the later claims of the deputy inspector that they were killed in custody. The Tehreek's moorings were anchored in the musings of the late G.M. Syed, who in the first instance steered the Pakistan resolution through the Sindh Assembly in the early 1940s, only to regret endorsing this Muslim Zion. His subsequent detention and house arrest during the last 30 years of his life were perhaps less spent in contrition than reflection. Envisaging an independent Sindhu Desh in one of his best-known tracks, Hiniya Pakistan ke tutan khappe, now Pakistan should disintegrate, was to irk, obviously, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, a fellow Sindhi, sometime Bombay Muhajir, full-time opportunist, all-time debauch, and a Sunni who, along with the Shia Shah across the border, was the architect of the real beginnings of Baluchistan's spiral into murder and mayhem. Bhutto was one among Bangladesh's founding fathers, let's be honest, but now squirmed at the thought of siring Sindhu Desh or Balochistan, quote, doing another Bengal. But Syed, as I just pointed out, had galvanized his provincial leadership to throw in their lot with the Muslim League. Nobody thought of inquiring if northern Baloches of British India's Chief Commissioner's province, along with their southern brethren, represented by an unrepresentative feudal Jirga, desired fusing, and in turn being hosted in the house that Jinnah built. And neither do the Pashtuns, as the sordid historical record, only too well known to be rehearsed here, shows. Afghan refugees now, as Pakistani NGOs have reported, find themselves arbitrarily rounded up in NWFP and Balochistan, when in February 2013 they were for attacks on the Hazara Shia. Earlier, a discredited federal administration attempted to burnish its credentials when its Interior Ministry's July 2012 report audaciously attempted to even-handedly point out that 868 individuals had been killed in Balochistan between 2010 and that date, and that the onus of these killings lay with the Baloch Liberation Army and the Lashkar-e Janvi, a Deobandist-inspired, ISI-sponsored Sunni militant group, among other so-called anti-state separatists, undermining Pakistan's integrity. And any lingering doubt regarding integrity was presently dispelled by the Commission of Inquiry on Enforced Disappearances, whose intrinsic reluctance to broach the issue of absconding civilians with Pakistan's domestic intelligence and law enforcement agencies sharply brought into relief its partisanship among Baloch groups. Such disappearances were rampant across the NWFP and FATA as well. The UN's Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances visited Quetta in September 2012. In its February 2013 working report, the working group condemned the striking absence of mention of the state's intelligence organs, which are principally and repeatedly culpable for such disappearances. The Supreme Court, Pakistan's apex judicial body, was stonewalled when its three-member bench held a special session hearing at the Quetta Registry of the Supreme Court over 2 days in August 2013. That bench, led by Justice Chaudhary, demanded that the intelligence agencies, police and frontier corps stationed there come clean within a fortnight on all missing individuals. And according to the US State Department's 2014 Human Rights Country Report on Pakistan, the security agencies, in a written judgment statement dated August 28, 2013, committed themselves to, quote, hand over any uniformed officers who were involved in the abduction of citizens of Balochistan, close quote. Another September 2013 hearing in that city also led nowhere, despite notices issued by the Supreme Court of Pakistan to the Inspector General of Baluchistan Police and the Inspector General of the Frontier Corps for failing to cooperate. Such an infirmity of purpose and culture of lawlessness run through the warp and weft of Pakistan officialdom, which, for the record, does not permit the ICRC, International Committee of the Red Cross, to have access to those held at detention sites in Balochistan, NWFP, and FATA. The 2009 Agaz-e-Haqooq-e Baluchistan remains a farce, as with so much else with Pakistanis in particular and South Asians at large. For illegal detention of Baluchis continues, and the panacea package mooted for Baluch woes, socio-economic and political, remains a pious proclamation on paper. Post-2014, the Baluch canker continues to fester. Some would claim a tipping point is on the anvil, yet others that we are well past it. There are several such tipping points across South Asia, where the basic conditions of civil existence have already broken down. In the Baluch context, we are dealing with an insufficiently imagined nationalist movement. Not all the reasons for it can be enumerated here, save salient features which make for grim commentary. They are positive, it may be reiterated by one who is an Orientalist, not a futurist. I can tell you what has happened, not what will. But Churchill soundly warned that the further back you look, the further forward you can see. And this could not be truer for the Orient and Orientals, and Muslim Orientals in this particular case. Consider then the facts. The Baluchis are a non-starter insofar as the Islamic world goes. Why? Because unlike Kashmiris, Uyghurs or Moros, Filipino Muslims, the OIC, which beautifully represents and articulates its aspirations of 57 Muslim polities, is, as with other Islamically inspired arrangements like the Arab League or GCC, simply a talking shop. Baluchis and Bolors in Pakistan or Kurds in Iraq, Syria and Turkey are disgruntled Muslims with long-standing grievances against oppressive fellow Muslims, not imperialists or infidels, namely non-Muslims. Had their views as been so, it would have made for a shrill rallying political concern among so-called cynical Muslims. And such Muslims would tend to extract as much political mileage as possible by highlighting their plight and portraying non-Muslims as perpetrators and Muslims as, well, once again, sufferers. There is a cognitive bias here in that corporate loyalty overrides any and every such criticism. It would be detrimental to Muslim unity, and meddlesome too, so the thinking goes, by asking fellow men to put their house in order, whether Turks, Pakistanis, Iranians or others, none of whom are squeamish about dealing with their recalcitrant Muslim minorities. Hence the stunning silence over such Muslim minorities at the OIC, which would be tantamount to interference in the affairs of brotherly Muslim states. And the hapless Baluchis certainly are a common concern to both brotherly Islamic republics, Iran and Pakistan, who will stop at nothing to check their anti-national or misguided insurgency. Iran and Baluchis, like their Pakistani kinsmen, perhaps more ruefully than them, know full well their tenuous relationship with Tehran, a regime whose ideological raison d'etre is predicated upon a peculiarly Persian version of 12-verse Shia Islam recrudescent after 1979. The Revolutionary Guards, that republic's Rottweilers, are precisely there to check Baluchis among other dissenters, whether Sunnis or Shias, who threaten the, quote, victory of the Islamic Revolution. Neither Tehran nor Islamabad would dare to even mildly question, never mind castigate Beijing over its treatments of Muslims in Xinjiang, Chinese Turkestan. For one thing, they cannot afford to do so. And actually, for a second, this goes for pretty much most of the OIC, which would think twice before taking cudgels with the Chinese. No such reservations come into play when criticizing Israel, India, Americans or Europeans over alleged mistreatment of Muslims. Had the Baluchis, for example, been non-Muslims, both Iran and Pakistan would have finished them off in no time. Ottoman Turkey did precisely that with its Armenian irredentists, leading to the 1915 genocide. And West Pakistan's military junta followed up with Bengali nationalists in the Eastern Wing by practically decimating its Hindu minority, which it held responsible for being a fifth column there. It is more difficult, however, to declare fellow Muslims as heretics or infidels, as is the case with the Baluchis. Historically, jihad would then be justified, but such is not the case with mainstream Sunni Baluchis. But that does not mean the Baluchis have not felt the harsh hand of alien rule for most of Pakistan's existence. So, and I wind up now. So, could a replay of 1973 be possible if, say, Iran and Pakistan jointly decide to tackle the Baluch question once and for all? An increasingly despised and hated Shia Iran, given its support for Syria, lacks credibility in the predominantly Sunni Arab world. Would that it were to assist Islamabad in any such venture? The Saudis would come down very heavily on those Punjabis running their Pakistani plantation. And any such reprisals, overtly or covertly by Tehran, would have far-reaching consequences for Pakistani Shias, a besieged, outraged minority which arguably more than most other marginalized groups in Pakistan today has reaped a grim dividend for their loyalty to the land of the Qari-Azam, himself a Shia. The Baluch separatists have remained both non-sectarian and non-confessional in their opposition to the Islamabad establishment. But with Punjabi and Pashtun Sunnis, the rank and file of the frontier corps, who continued their pick-up and dump routine of fellow Sunni Hanafi victims, who are largely middle-class, politically conscious, alienated, impoverished Baluchis. It is they who are paying the price for, as I stated earlier, of an insufficiently imagined national movement. The Baluchis, linguistically, anthropologically, psychologically, and biologically, do fulfill certain criteria for being considered a nation, something which the Pakistan movement, a motley assortment of Muslim Zionists from the minority districts of British India, expressly united in animus against a Hindu-dominated Congress, never did, but who nevertheless forged a state where Urdu was declared a national language, the mother tongue of barely 8% of the populace, and where no two Muslim divines, when queried by the 1953 Munir Commission, could agree on the definition of what is Islam. Pakistanis still don't. But they can agree, it seems, on singing Dil Dil Pakistan, My Heart is Pakistan, a pop number regarded as Pakistan's unofficial anthem and produced by Vital Signs, the late Miss Bhutto's favorite band. That troupe, like her, has trooped off the field. But their lyrics endure, which the frontier corps, Punjabis and Pashtuns to a man, force Baluchis during stop-and-search swoops to sing extempore. Would the frontier corps, ladies and gentlemen, or the regular Pakistani army compel hardened, fatter inhabitants